Good day to everybody. It is our November 6th visit with you today. Wow. Today on the program, financial planner Ryan Chin with post-U.S. elections financial predictions. Wow, what a talk that'll be. And what do secret remote control buttons, street addresses, and security guards have in common? Jennie Bovard of AMI TV's Pretty Blind program debuting next year. We explain all of it later in the show, coming up.
This is Kelly and Company.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're settling in for the next 58 minutes with yours. So glad you could be with us. Kelly McDonald here, Ramya Muthan right
Hello.
over there. How are you today, Ram?
Pretty good midweek. You know, it feels like we've done many shows already, not just because it's a throwback to Kelly and Company, but because we did these 2 dry run shows, right, before the show officially started airing. But then we posted clips on social media of the dry run shows, and I'm thinking like, wow, we've had so many shows, but actually not. Officially, this is my third show with you.
It almost feels like we're prepared.
Yeah,
It
no, that's true
almost
too.
does. Yeah.
It's like
There's
we're tricking
Nazreen
ourselves.
joining us, of course, on the program. And Nazreen has been handling so much of our social media and utilizing what you can to get it out there. And it's really fantastic work there. But I remember a discussion just before we got the show going. We were in the office and AMI was getting rid of some stuff with now with Dave Brown disappearing, our show disappearing. And we were looking at different things. They were saying, hey, guys, if you want some of these, take them. Of course, Ramya, we've always had these mugs.
Yeah.
No, what do you call these thermoses?
Oh, the
I
thermoses,
guess
right.
you want to call them the steel thermoses. And we've got one here that I've just waved at everybody, a Kelly and Ramya mug. And when I was asked if I wanted more of them, because of course,
Yeah.
you know, the show's defunct. You don't really like that
I
word. or
didn't
that
agree to that terminology.
No, you don't
I
love that.
did not.
I'm not really sure why. Defunct, the show's gone.
Carry on. We agree to disagree.
Yeah. Okay. So I said, no, I've already got one of these. Yes, it's a great souvenir of the show, but I'm waiting for the return of the Kelly and Company, bottles or whatever they come up with. I'd like
did
a
you
nice
have
mug,
any?
right? Long
Did you
time
have
ago.
Kelly and Company swag that was sent up? Really? I don't remember.
I think so.
I have
Well, I
very
don't
short
really
memory.
remember
Like I don't
either.
remember past Kelly and Ramya stuff.
Do
But I
you
liked it.
keep
Like we
all
had
the stuff?
yeah.
Like from our show, the other shows, there was a while that marketing was sending out a bunch of the stuff from the different shows they were launching, which was really
Yes.
great.
You keep everything, right, Nez? Like they send us some wicked stuff.
Like, did you get the spatula from Mary?
Kitchen Confession or Dish with Mary?
No.
Yes.
I think it was dishes.
Yeah.
I think it was a nice
There was an
spatula.
apron that I rarely use because I don't know.
I need some of the stuff I'm not getting.
Yeah.
Lost
there's
in
so
the
much
mail,
stuff.
maybe?
Well,
Your
maybe.
postal
Maybe.
address was pretty far.
I think they wanted to be sure we'd do stuff like this, hold it up in the air on the show and stuff like that, and wave the stuff around.
Even
they
if the
said,
stuff
they're the
doesn't
hosts.
exist anymore.
That's right. Well, it was a defunct show, so let's wave that stuff around. Kelly, go ahead. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us on the program. Nazreen Abdel-Majid, Ramya Muthan, Kelly McDonald, host of the show. Lucia Bellafante joins us, and I don't think she has any of our old swag kicking around either. She's sitting there thinking, hey, how do I get all that? Why am I not invited to the table where it's all laid out? How are you? Welcome back to the program.
Hi, thank you for having me back. I love being with you guys. Listen, I say your show was not defunct. It was simply transformed. How's that?
Oh, great. I'm so glad this was brought up before we started taping, Lucia, because I knew that you'd think of a way to make it sound evolutionary.
So on the October 31st, I was saying the reboot of Kelly and Company.
Right.
Because
I like that.
I knew canceled or any of the other terminologies, defunct, were not really appreciated or welcomed. So I said reboot of Kelly and Company, stayed all away from the Kelly and Ramya plane crash or whatever you want to call it.
My goodness. We can change the language, but the attitude stays the same, huh?
Hey, look at we had a lot of fun doing any show. Anytime we've been on the air, we've enjoyed ourselves and have great conversations and topics. So let's get into a wellness coach conversation here as Lucia joins us on the program. Today's topic, understanding what your emotional and physical health looks like for you and why it's relevant to parenting and creating a healthy family environment. Lucia, can we start with why is understanding one's definition of health important to you?
Right. Well, I think personally it's because if you don't understand what health looks like to you, how are you going to achieve it, right? How are you going to be able to gauge whether or not things are working if you have to tweak something? So
Right.
basically, it helps you to identify your needs and wants and then set forth a plan of action to accomplish those goals, right?
Um,
For yourself
and,
and your
and,
family.
Well, I was just going to say, and that is how you
Mhm.
can do better for the family, get and work them in together, because this is a together thing we're talking.
Yes, we are talking about not only necessarily like your personal overall emotional and physical health as an adult, but in connection to your family. But I think if you don't understand for yourself, then how can you translate that into your children, right?
Mm.
And we don't want to be hypocritical as adults and say to a child, eat your vegetables, but then you're not eating them and you're only snacking on junk food and that's what your child sees. So it's a kind of a blend and a mesh of a lot of wonderful things. Make sense?
Yes, yes. And it's good that you use the diet example because I think it's relatable for a lot of people. You know, like we're adulting, but then
Mm-hmm.
we're thinking, oh, I have to actually eat vegetables if I'm trying to get my kid to eat vegetables because you know it's good for them
Yeah.
and for us, but it's
Well,
Yes,
and
not
we hear about the
necessarily
formative
exactly.
practiced.
years, right? With everything, Lucia, and that is one of the things people learn. And I know when I was a kid, I heard, "Hey, it's not monkey see, monkey do here. You don't do the same thing I do. You don't do what I would do.
Mm,
Don't do what your friend would do." But how do you explain that to a child who
Yeah.
you're supposedly, leading
right.
by example?
But I think that's the key. It's you are leading by example. I think it's important for us to remember that as an adult, we do have a responsibility. And we're not perfect. And this is not about shaming anyone or putting blame on anyone. But the goal of self-reflection is to grow. And so if we're
Hmm.
going to grow, then we have to look at ourselves. If we do say to our child, well, don't do what I'm doing, but do what I'm saying, how truly effective is that? What message
Mm,
are you really then sharing with your child? So maybe the conversation is slightly different, and you have the conversation of, you know what, nobody is perfect. It's the idea of that like 80% to 90% clean diet, and then you can have a little bit of fun, and you talk about that with your kids.
So it's
mm.
okay to kind of bring up
Work
that
around.
we're not perfect as
I think
parents or that
so.
things are work in progress. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
curious about that because when you
Mm-hmm.
say like we have to know what our
Mm-hmm.
beliefs are or have an understanding of our
Mm-hmm.
own belief systems, that's a
Yes.
tough part unto itself, right? Like there's so much
It is.
noise
That's
out
big.
there.
Yes. And I think that, we're not, I'll speak for myself, and, my experiences have taught me that we are not as adults nor as children taught to self-reflect and to
Hmm.
consider our own needs and wants and what is best for us, albeit all the advertisement that is out there, all of the social media that is out there telling us what we want and what we need. And
Mm.
so, it is. I mean, we could talk for hours and hours just on how to get to the depth of understanding who you are and what is important to you. I mean, we don't have hours and hours, but I think it's, even just putting out there that once in a while it's good to sit back and reflect and say, okay, why did I just eat that? Or why did I just do that? Why did I just say that? Is it
Right.
something that right? Is it something that you
Yeah,
learned,
but
or
if
is it,
you're a
right?
child,
Yeah,
you ask the
yeah,
same question because I was lord of
yes,
the, why, how
yes,
come? Explain
yes,
that to me. And sometimes people made it out to be a bad. Don't ask why, just do as you're told. Sometimes it was here. Come on, sit down over here.
yeah,
Let me explain this to you.
Hmm.
How do you navigate
yes,
that as a parent? Where I know often people are never mind when they're busy. They don't necessarily mean I'm not going to tell you how come
right,
we want you to eat more vegetables. Just eat your vegetables.
right.
It's a bad moment to ask the question. But why isn't and I know some people are raised that
Hmm.
why is a bad thing to ask?
Well, so
We know
I'm
it's
going
not.
to first of all say, yeah, I cannot change anyone's opinion. I think people's
Right.
opinions are very difficult to mitigate. However, you said it beautifully, Kelly, when you said you're in a rush or it's not a good time. So why don't we just verbalize that? Why can't we say
Yeah.
to our child, you know what, I will explain this to you, but for right now, I don't have the time or I can't. I'm unable to. And then the most important part is you must go back to it. Now, of course, it's all dependent on the child's age, because if you have a very young child, you can't necessarily say that because they might not remember
Right.
2 hours later or a day later about what had happened. And so I think you need to be able to figure that out for yourself. And then maybe if it's your child is very young, you could just say something like, you know what, I know because the doctor told me, and I've done lots of reading, that when we have a lot of fruits and vegetables in our diet, it's really good for the inside of our body and the outside of our body.
Mm.
So together we're going to try some new things, or make sure that we eat one of these, and then make it fun. I always say communicate and make it fun, right? Include your child in that decision-making process. And I think that is a nice way around it.
And this
Okay.
kind of touches on
sense?
parenting style as well, Lucia.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a lot of parents who either struggle with or try to strike the balance of, am I your friend or am I your
Yeah.
authority? And
Mhm.
this is like
Right.
the ongoing question forever and ever. But now, especially with a lot more conversations being open to people on social media, you're
Mm-hmm.
hearing what
Mm-hmm.
parents are going through. And there's one particular example of a parent on a podcast who was talking about she was so stressed, she was having a terrible day, and she took it out on her kid, meaning like, she yelled and screamed and made him
Right.
see her out of control, and then
Right.
went to her room, slammed the door, thought about it and thought, oh my gosh, like,
Yep.
is it even okay for my kid to see me like this, and how do we repair from that rupture? And
Right.
wonder about your opinions on that.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you, you don't need to give me the complete answer, but did they have a solution for what happened? I'm curious. I didn't see
Yeah,
that.
like she talked about
Oh,
then going
okay.
and approaching her kid, and not
Yeah,
necessarily
it's okay.
a
Don't tell me.
solution. Yeah, yeah.
Right. But I would say the same thing, right? I think that in that moment where whatever was happening, you kind of lost your temper, or you weren't able to control yourself as well as you would have liked to, and your child has seen this.
Mhm.
But I mean, it sounds to me like really that was the end of it. They yelled and then they removed themselves from the situation, calmed down, went back and had a conversation. And to me, that's healthy, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah. Yeah.
we are all human. And I don't think, as long as we then go back to our child and we're calm and we are reflective as we are speaking and explain to the child what had happened, perhaps part of what led up to that, how that explosive reaction was not the best thing to do. However, point out what was positive in that,
Mhm.
she screamed and yelled, but then removed herself and calmed her down. And these are strategies that we want to teach our children anyhow, because we all come across situations and challenges where we are unable to, be our best self. And so that's
Mhm.
okay. That's that what we talked about before about not needing to be perfect. But then
Right.
it's what you do afterwards that counts. So the conversation afterwards, saying, I would ask my child, even though I might know the answer, but I'd say to my child, what do you think I could have done differently? How can I help myself? Do you have any ideas of what maybe I can do if I'm feeling that way next time? And get their brains thinking, right? So that's helping themselves, and they're contributing to the relationship. And to me, that's not a friendship parenting style. That's the, authoritative, nurturing, inclusive parenting style.
But
Mhm.
you're still
Well,
allowing the
Mhm.
conversations.
Hello?
and you have to, in my opinion, because it's the
Ah,
only way to
you
understand
guys
and
there?
to see my parental, maybe not in the best mode, maybe not in the best, having the best day, and not feeling the world is a
Hello?
strange plastic world that can't be perfect is, I think, important. But when you talk about that parenting style and healthiness to it, any other things
Mhm.
we should think about that it needs to look like? Like I love and always was raised with the conversations. You know that, Lucia.
I think we may have lost
Oh,
Lucia,
yeah, I think we
or
did.
she couldn't hear us or something.
Yeah,
Anyways,
we'll see if we can get
Mark's
her
working
back.
on it. We'll see.
Yeah. Were
But
you
yeah,
able to ask why and stuff like that? A lot of people
no.
tell me some of the scariest things. No.
I'm not gonna
Wow.
lie to you. In my house growing up, you weren't necessarily encouraged to ask questions. And, going back to that initial statement that Lucia said, where like your belief system as a parent matters to your family, to your kid. And that belief system was kids are kids and parents are parents. And that's why
Mhm.
I know that, like, I call it modern parenting, but I know that now there's a lot more on just the talk to your kids, talk with your kids, let your kids talk to you. You listen to them as much as they listen to you approach, which I think is healthy. Like, I inertly feel that that is healthy
Yeah.
to develop relationships with your kids, and not just like separate the dynamic of parent is a parent and this is what that means and the role of a kid is this, but it's hard to practice because that wasn't encouraged growing up in our family.
Yeah. How about you, Nazreen? Were you able to ask the questions or have those conversations, or were you just the child?
I can relate to Ramya. We grew up just
Okay.
not to ask questions and to respect our parents in a way that like you can. I feel like if you ask so many questions, it comes out as disrespectful according to
Hmm.
Yeah.
the family, the
Don't
adults.
question the
We're
parenting.
yeah, exactly. Like you're the child, you're the parent. There's no questions being asked. I mean, of course, like it depends on the topic. I feel like it always depends on the topic, but when it
Mhm.
comes to certain things, you just can't argue. Like you really can't argue and ask questions directly.
So were simple
Remy,
questions viewed as arguing back though, or and I don't mean just I
It
want you to
can
go to your
be.
room. It's getting late. Why? But
No, it
okay, we
depends.
were. Yeah, see,
Like,
I was
even
always
the
taught
most
saying, no, you
existential
don't say
questions
that.
can sometimes be, threatening, right?
Yep.
it's like
Because
Yep.
talking back. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Like
Right.
there's certain questions. Like for example, okay, you can't go to this party. Well, why not?
don't ask questions.
Um, don't ask questions. You just
'Cause I
can't.
said so.
Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
because I said so. Oh my god, that sentence. I said so. That's
Well,
it.
and I'm
That's
not going
the
to
end of the
pretend to you guys I
conversation.
didn't hear that stuff either. I'm not going to say, but I
But
felt
was
for
it
me
different for
as
you?
we talk about it, well, some of it, but like I got a lot of more of that, well, don't smart bad. We don't have time for that now. Or it was usually in the way I just described it earlier. There, oh, I'm in the middle of something. Don't be asking that, or because I told you so.
Mm,
Because go to your room.
mhm.
Well, is it late? Do I have to go to my room now? Yes, that's why I'm telling you to go to your room because I want you in your room. That
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
thing. So, but I also did hear, even as a child, those conversations, have conversations with your kids, be inclusive. I did hear some of that too. And I always wonder because in Canada, we have so many different cultures, so many different ways and people bring to our country. And it's fascinating
Mhm,
always to ask the question, well, and I don't like to say, were you allowed to do this? It's like, were
mm.
you allowed to stay up past 9 o'clock when you were 8? I don't
Yeah.
remember. How about when you were 9? I don't remember.
We
Well,
weren't, but we did
nowadays I
anyway.
feel like there's no curfews.
Yeah.
I hear
Yeah,
like
and first of all,
kids
I always
screaming at
stayed
1
past.
a.m. in the park, and I'm like, what's happening?
I know.
And then I feel like okay, I feel like I'm at that age where I frequently say, "Oh, when I was your age," to like my little cousins,
Yeah.
this and this. But no, it's so different how we grew up and how they grow up now. It's so different.
Shifting so heavily. Like, I can already tell my brother who's 8 years younger than me, he had different parents than I did. Not literally,
Yeah,
just that the type of
I
parenting
get
has
you.
shifted so
Yes.
severely, right?
My little
Yeah.
See, that,
sister
I
as
wonder,
well.
I
Oh
like
my
to
is
think
that
of it.
confidence? Is that
Oh,
confidence?
oh,
I think. Lucia, there you are.
there you are.
yes, I'm
Lu-
back. I don't know what happened.
Well, let's
But
Lucia pick up. We've been just discussing what the different things that we all ran into because I had asked the magic question about saying why. What is the healthy family that you would say though? The style. What would that healthy family look like in that
mm,
style?
so I mean, the most. Uh, so there are many new terms. So I think parenthood or parenting has evolved, right? And there's such a thing as conscious parenting or um, patient parenting. But if we think of the original four terms, authoritarian, authoritative, permissive, or uninvolved, authoritative is the one that is nurturing, the one that has that balance between where parents set clear expectations and guidelines, but then there's that open communication. Children are encouraged to have input. Results are talked about. It's not so much you've done something wrong, so you're going to be punished. There are logical consequences to behaviors, but at the same time, there are discussions around it so that you're understanding why. And that's positive because it leads to a child having the ability to self-regulate later on when they're an adult. They feel more confident. They've got responsibility. They're understanding the whys behind things. But it's interesting, if I can also add, when you were talking about the whys, in our parents, I think there are many factors that play into, parenthood and the culture of parenting in a family. So it could be, that a parent says, just, you're not allowed to ask why. And if you're asking why, you're being disrespectful. It could be because that's how they grew up. It could be that they think that is what respect looks like. Perhaps they're in a work environment where it's very similar to that. And so they've just adopted that style. We don't know. And again, I really want to reinforce the fact that as adults, we're talking about parenting and what's happened to us. And we have all gone through childhood. And never is this, to say that we are blaming our parents. So I want to, predicate with that because I very much had a father who was, you say, you do what I say, not what I do. You weren't allowed to ask questions. There was absolutely no communication. However, I understand now as an adult that really both my parents did their very best, given their education, their experiences, their lifestyle, their knowledge. And so there's that balance between understanding and being compassionate and empathetic. And then there's that other side, which I know we don't have time to talk about today, but when is that line crossed that then it becomes not just a style or a parenting style, but abusive, and so
there was so many of these. There was so much of the seen, not heard thing. Lucia, as usual, beautiful conversation. We'll talk to you next month.
Thank you.
Talk to you next month.
We start off Wednesdays with wellness on the program, and Lucia Bellafante will join us once a month here on the program on our Wednesdays. Really great chat, and I really appreciate, I have to say, Ramya and Nazreen, your openness, and I know your families, if they were watching, that's the way it was. That's right. Seen and not heard. We should have used that on Ramya more often.
Nobody is going to argue with me on the facts. No, I'm kidding. But, really, though, it does resonate. Every part of these conversations resonates to some degree or another, like in terms of how I was parented, but then the difference between me and how my little brother's parented, the generational gaps, and also just, throwing in any nuance of the conversation, which is my parents migrated from Sri Lanka to here, and I was already born there. I came here, but then, raising kids here is very different, or you have different influences. The education system is different. The way that parenting styles have changed is different.
Mentality.
There's honestly so much to the conversation. But I do think that it's important to compare notes, especially Kel, between Nasreen and I versus what you experienced, because you grew up in different parts of the country and you had different experiences growing up, just going to W. Ross and things like that as well, right?
It's really interesting because, and I know that's what Canada is. We're so many different perspectives, experiences that we can lend. And I love it when we get into this kind of thing because as Lucia says it, she understood what her father and mother, the parenting style, even though it was very much of that, don't ask questions. And I understood some of the viewpoints they had. And my parents were kind of a mix. And most time I recognize, hey, we're in a hurry. We don't have time to answer that now. So really
Mhm.
great, ladies. Thank you very much. We're going to skip down here and bring Jennie Bovard in just a moment. So just stick with us here. I just want to first let you know to email us when you want to have, if you have questions and you want them answered. It's at kellyco ami.ca, excuse me, kellyco at ami.ca. Drop your messages to us. Well, Jennie Bovard, an interesting life on our network. Jennie, welcome to the show. And why I say that is you start out on the show being a reporter with us, on doing different things for AMI this week. You leave the network, you come on back in different forms, which has absolutely been tremendous. You're a sports person, you've had a podcast on the network, and shared so many stories and opened your own life to so much out there that so many people smile at or say, oh God, I wouldn't like that. But you're just a wealth of comfort when it comes to being open, being honest. And one thing particular I love is being able to laugh at yourself. We welcome you to the show, and we introduce you as, of course, a contributor to AMI, a writer and star. And we'll be seeing that next year of the forthcoming AMI TV scripted comedy series, Pretty Blind. Now, Ramya keeps making a mistake here and trying to put Pretty Blonde in the script.
I wrote it
Nothing I should
several
be
times.
reading like that. Yeah, and I told her,
It's
what the
pretty
heck,
blonde.
man? HR will be coming to me and saying, what the heck? And then she explained, of course, your online presence. And oh, okay, that's a really great excuse.
It's a
Welcome.
great
How are you?
excuse.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for the extremely warm welcome. Like you said, I'm a habitual contributor across AMI and y'all can't get rid of me. So I'm just so pleased
Nor
that
do we
you've
want to.
invited me here.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm so pleased to be here. And I am really grateful for this space to have these, as you said, sort of light end of the spectrum, lighthearted, everyday sort of silly things that could be embarrassing, but we go about our lives,
Yeah.
and I'm just excited to be here to chat with the both of you.
Well,
Thank you.
so much of what you dealt with on your podcast was all about that kind of thing. We all laugh. We all get around when you get a bunch of blind people together and share the stories of going in the wrong door here, or talking to the lamppost thinking you're actually speaking to a person because you're low vision and might think that, and the lighting isn't the greatest. So I'm to pose to you the question to get us launched into it today. Is there something that you only learned recently or later in life that, well, perhaps expected because you are blind, you would have loved to know earlier in life? It would have been a help.
Well, the short answer would be a long yes. Yes. And it occurs regularly. I'm a woman with albinism, with low vision. I'm visually impaired, and I'm approaching my 40s. Maturity wise, I'm probably stuck at 16. That parenting talk was
Good,
really
stay there. That's
insightful.
healthier.
That's where my sense of humor lies most of the time at 16. But I'm approaching 40, you guys, and I kind of relish in the fact that I still get to have my mind blown on kind of a regular basis. I would say probably once a week or so. I learn something new and it shocks me. And it is because so much of our world, and I'm sure you can both appreciate this, I know that I'm not alone, but so much of the world is, and how it works day to day is so visual. And I just find
Mm.
myself learning new and interesting things all the time. And sometimes it's kind of like, how did I not know this? Other people are going to wonder why I didn't know this thing, but the examples are endless. Please tell me I'm not the only one that feels this way.
Of course not.
Absolutely not.
Mm.
No, no,
Give
no.
us examples, though.
Yeah, loosen us up so we'll be more honest.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I am happy to bring examples. I've got probably too many to cover, but the one that blew my mind recently was, okay, so let me set the scene. I have Amazon Prime, I've got all the streaming services, and for Amazon Prime, I tend to access that on my smart TV. I do have an Apple TV, but for some reason, I like the interface on my smart TV. My smart TV is not smart enough to have like voice control, so I use the screen reader on my smart TV and on my remote, both of which I've had for about 10 years. The same goes for Amazon Prime. I've had it about 10 years. I've got this TV remote memorized. Normally, I navigate with the screen reader using the directional buttons and the OK button in the middle. I've got all the important buttons figured out. Or so I thought. Or so I thought. The other day, a couple weeks ago, I'm sitting there navigating through the smart TV with the screen reader. My husband, Eve, comes in the room and sits down. What are we going to watch? Well, I don't know. I'm still getting into Amazon Prime. Boop, boop, boop. I'm doing my usual steps. And he says to me, all casual, why are you taking so many steps to get to Amazon Prime? To which I replied, what do you mean exactly? And he proceeds to tell me that there is an Amazon Prime button on the remote. It's a one-stop, one press, opens up Amazon Prime.
Oh, Eve.
And for years, I'd been taking, I don't know how many minutes of time in my life I've lost.
You would have thought he would have caught you before
Memorizing
doing
the
this.
process and
Like-
everything
like-
too. You got it all figured
or
out.
caught you doing this before and saying, what the heck are you doing? What? Like, wow.
These are the stages I went through. I went through shock, and then it was like a little bit of anger. Why didn't
Yeah.
anybody tell me this sooner? And then I was
Stages
grateful,
of
and then I was
breathing.
thankful. And I was like, okay, thank you. I'm going to use this now, but why didn't you tell me sooner?
And now he's going to say, hey, why is this button so wore out now? I can't even read the Amazon Prime button anymore.
She keeps pressing it too hard. She still has resentment.
Over
I think
and
one of
over
the worst
again.
parts is I knew there was a Netflix button on the remote. And the Amazon Prime button is just opposite the Netflix button on the other side. So
you didn't think that
I could have
Amazon was
thought to
big enough
ask.
for its own button. Netflix was.
I could have thought to ask about it, right?
Yeah,
But I
well,
didn't.
I don't
Eve
know
could've just
because
told you.
Yeah, but you also get it in our heads that, well, of course, Netflix, that was the first one. But how many,
Yeah.
every time a new service, like there's not going to be a BritBox button on it. Like you sit there,
Hold
like,
up,
well, there's
though.
got to be a limit.
Like, how
What's that?
common are these buttons? Because now I'm thinking I have two smart
if I have 'em.
TVs, and
Yep.
I don't know if I have them. And the remotes look similar.
Well,
They're
that's
all
what half our
Samsung.
blind audience is doing now. They're going to go find someone
they're
and
trying
say,
to
or call
feel-
my eyes and say, can you tell
You
me
know
the
what I
buttons on
wish?
this darn thing? Jennie
Hold up.
says,
You know how if you're using voiceover on a computer with an actual physical keyboard, you can use keyboard help to figure out like
Yep.
what the buttons are of your keyboard and figure out the combinations that voiceover uses. I wish there was something like that on the remote. Is there already? Do I sound
no, I
like an
don't
idiot?
think so, right? Because
No. Okay.
sighted people don't need that in the same way. They
Yeah,
would just
it's more
hit
like
the
a
button and then
screen
back up.
reader thing. But that would be
Yeah.
helpful. Then you could just press like mash buttons and figure out what buttons you're mashing. There's too many
Yeah.
buttons.
I
on a
love
remote
the
control.
I love the keyboard assist. Okay, Jennie, you have another example for us.
Yeah.
You're
Oh.
just about getting us to come out of our own cocoons about this.
Well, thank you for backing me up and saying, no, this is not something you obviously should have known. I
No way.
appreciate that. Now, the next one, I don't know about my next example because I feel like this is a thing that people knew. But since I moved to this neighborhood, I walk my dog all over this neighborhood. And I was out with a friend. We were walking our dogs. And we walk by this one house and they have this dog. Oh, I can't recall his name. He's a feisty little thing. So we always pay attention to this house to make sure the feisty little dog isn't out front. He's going to come yapping at my big boy, at my big dog. And we pass this house. I'm looking up at the house and I say, what's that on the side of the house? People in my life, I ask a lot of questions. What does that sign say? What is that over there? Please fill me in. And I was really not sure what was scrawled along the front of this house, sort of next to the front door. And they're like,
Oh.
hey, that's the civic address. That's the address. And I'm like, wait a second. Let me get my phone out and take a picture of this. I take a picture of the front of this house, trying not to be creepy all the while.
Yeah, because I was just going to say, then they
casually
open the
looking at
gate
my
and sick the
phone.
dog on you. Get out of here.
The little ankle biter. No,
Yeah.
very cute dog. Just a little feisty.
Go
So
on,
I
ankles. Go
take a
back home.
picture, I zoom in, and I realize there are homes and businesses, possibly, I don't know, with the civic address, the number of the address written in cursive. Did you guys know this?
I didn't know that was. For some reason, I thought it would be like an illegal thing. Like you could just hand scroll your addresses and pop it up on your house.
I think it's professionally made. Like it's
Professionally cursive made.
Well,
Get out of
but
yes.
here.
often are they, Jenny, in your research now with this? Are they generally in the same spot? My understanding is people have the biggest problems because you kind of, as you're looking for an address, maybe a whole neighborhood might have them roughly in the same spots and have some kind of rhyme or reason. But people will say to me, "Ah, it's hard to find address. Where's the address on that place?" Like it's kind of inconsistent
Yeah,
in
of
a lot
course
of
it's
places.
inconsistent. Yeah.
And
That's
that's
what I
kind of
understand.
nice. It's kind of, I shouldn't say that. It's kind of nice that everyone has a hard time finding addresses and reading addresses. But I often feel like, oh, as a person with low vision, these things happen to me maybe a little bit more often than in the
Mhm.
sighted world. But it blew my mind, guys. In my close to 40 years, apparently it's a very common thing in residential neighborhoods.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's where where the number would normally be labeled on a house.
My
So it just, I was like, why would you do that? First of all, again, like we
Uh-huh.
said, it's difficult enough to see and find addresses. It sounds like an accessibility fail to me because
It
yes, for
is.
sure.
our
Yep.
No questions asked about that. But now I'm curious if the seeing AIs or the magnifier apps of the world can pick up the cursive. I
ooh,
hope
I'm going to
so.
test that today. I will test
Can
it
you?
today.
Yeah, let
Yes.
us know
I
because
would
I'm
think it
so
could.
curious about that. I
Uh,
use that like every day when I'm walking,
Well, and I
especially
think
if I'm trying to find somewhere.
they know that you're looking for an address. Like if you do that, it knows and captures that. Oh,
It's
you
looking
must
for
be looking for a address.
text.
Sort of like what we
Yeah.
talked about the door, right? Looking for a doorway on some of the apps now. They know. Well, you're looking. If you're looking and scrolling, they'll tell you it's a door. I remember as a kid, my father, when he would take an extra bit of like from his job and Christmas was coming closer, he'd pick up some extra work delivering flowers and different
Hmm.
things like that. And he had a darn spotlight in his car. He'd pull this thing up on, and we used to tell him, "We're waiting for the phone call from the police department because you've been nosing around neighborhoods, shining your light in people's windows, and I'm looking for
Yeah.
addresses." Yeah, yeah, sure you are,
Yeah, that
Dad.
does sound
Well,
problematic.
yeah, you like the sound of the cell door closing. You tell us all about it. Jenny, speaking of things like that, can you tell us a little bit about security guards?
Okay. Okay. Again, another thing that I feel is probably common knowledge. My husband informs me a lot about the world around me, and I have him to thank for this one as well. We were in a parking lot of I feel it was like a mall type uh complex. Imagine like the land of big box stores, and we're like in the middle of a parking lot, and we're sitting in the car waiting for someone to return from shopping. And he mentions, "Oh, there's the security guard doing his checks." First of all, he's showing off that he can tell that there's someone who is a security guard off in the distance.
Nice.
And then my first thought was like, "Hey, isn't it nice to know when you have to behave? Like you know that there's security around, you have to behave yourselves." Um, so that was my first thought. But then he says, "Oh, they're doing their security checks and they're doing that thing they do around the perimeter of the building where they press the buttons in." And I was like, "Excuse me?
What buttons?
What? What buttons?" Much like the
Yep.
remote, what
Yep.
what buttons? What process are we talking about here? And he says, as if it's common knowledge, "Oh, they walk around the building, and around the perimeter of the building, there are apparently these buttons underneath
Punch
sort of
in.
where I would think the wall and the foundation would meet. And you're depressing these buttons to say security check. It's like
Yep.
a checkpoint type thing."
Whoa.
And
Yeah.
I was like, "What? Wow."
Is it
I've
just
Yeah.
like a
worked in
basic building? What kind
Well,
of building was
yeah,
this again?
yeah, but it's they used to call it the night watchman
Kelly
would walk
knows.
around in the old days, and they
Oh.
would punch in, right? They'd use a key in the old days in the old movies, and you hear them, "Hey, you're walking," talking to themselves. and that just let
I
them know, okay, in case they disappeared. Well, last time he did a check-in was 4:13 in the morning. But as for the
really.
buttons, no, I never knew. But I know as soon as you started saw, oh yeah, that's he's punching in. Then they also know if they're sitting there sleeping somewhere.
I feel like this is a visual thing that people probably just pick up on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
sure.
in the land of big box stores, you see the security guard off in the distance, they're doing their rounds. Maybe you get a closer look at different time, you notice what they're doing. It's just those little pieces of information for me that I've learned in my adult life to give myself a little bit more grace, where I used to, there's certain things where you get a twinge of maybe embarrassment or like, ooh, I probably should have known that. But then I remind myself, okay, wait, I don't
How?
have. Right,
Yes.
exactly. How would I
How
have
would
Mm.
I
known that?
know? Well, even watching
Exactly.
movies, right? We can say, I can sit here and say, oh, yeah, they talk about that in the movies. When all the guys are planning the big robbery, they say, well, the security guy goes around at this point and blah, blah, blah. He does an hourly check. Well, somebody knows that from, of course, the bad person inside that tells them he does his walk around. So we kind of get that, but I have no idea what he actually does to know anything, or if he's, just reporting or sending a text to somebody saying, I did the 2 o'clock walk around and all's clear. We have no idea because a lot of that stuff is visual in a movie, let alone what we'd see anywhere else. Wow.
This is
And
impressive.
wow, yes.
Yeah.
I'm like reading about this process now, and I'm thinking I had no idea this was even part of. I genuinely had no idea what a security guard does.
Oh,
Clearly,
thank you. I feel
this
so
is
much better.
unreal.
It's a whole thing. And
Stairwells, exit points, like this is super secure, guys. I feel so much better about buildings being secured.
Do you feel safer now?
I feel safer.
Now, don't go
Thanks,
around
Jenny.
yourself feeling around. Where are those buttons? I'm going to
Yeah,
hit
yeah.
them.
Where are
It's
the
2 o'clock
buttons?
in the afternoon. Get out of here, Ramya.
I'm fascinated.
Jenny,
Guard
absolutely
tour or
great.
guard
And see
patrol
what you've done,
management.
Jenny? You brought the shyness out. We were carrying on and all that kind of thing, cutting you off and like, oh, yeah, I know this. I know that. I didn't know that. As I think
I'm
all these
pleased to have
conversations are going
wowed
to
you a little bit,
Yeah,
because
thanks.
that's what I choose to do, is to be wowed by the thing and not sort of kick myself for being late to the party. And
Yeah.
Oh,
it's, these are little everyday things, but I think that there are bigger things, like things that can be more impactful. There's a woman I follow, I believe her name is Heather Hutchison on Instagram, and she's a
Mm.
TikToker, but I get her stuff on Instagram because I'm a little older than the TikTok era. I think I'm still learning. But she posted recently about having a better understanding of the size of a whale, right? The huge, massive size of a whale, because she encountered a
right.
life-size sculpture. And to have something like that be brought to you, and to gain that context within the world, I think like something
Mhm.
like that for me, when I went to Europe and I was able to touch a lot of the architectural models that were scaled down, and they would have in front of the architectural um, marvels that people would be visually, enjoying, I was able to like get a better understanding of what I was looking at with the vision that I
Yeah.
have. Right.
Yes,
And so
for
it's
sure.
just, yeah, the world is incredible, and it's going to keep surprising me, and I love it.
I was today
Absolutely
years old
fantastic
when I
and
learned
so true.
that. This is so true
How old?
for blind, low vision
How old?
people. That whole meme or whatever. It's like I was today years old
Yeah.
when I learned that dot dot dot.
Right. Well, and it's so true. And we're all different places. But also, Jenny, it's a lot based on what we're interested in, what we might hear, what we pick up and say, oh, hold on. Tell me more about that. What is that?
Mm.
Awesome. Thank you, Jenny. We'll talk to you next month.
Thanks,
My
Jenny.
pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate the time and the great conversation. Jennie Bovard joining us on the program, and we will be visiting with her once a month here, and we'll get into some of these great conversations that we'll be discussing. Remember, she is the writer, one of the writers, and host of Pretty Blind, AMI's series coming out next year. Kelly McDonald here, Ramya Muthan. We welcome you to Kelly and Company. And boy, really kind of cool when we get talking about things like that, Ramya. I really find that amazing. And if you out there have anything you want to contribute to that, ladies and gentlemen, give us a call, 1-866-509-4545.
Okay, we have one more guest joining us on today's episode of the show, and that is certified financial planner Ryan Chin. He's here from Sun Life Financial, and he's been a regular contributor on the show in many of its iterations now. And we're going to talk, Ryan, with you about market considerations post-U.S. presidential election, which is obviously hot off the press now. And I'm very curious because you sent us some notes on what you believed where the market would stand post-election, pre-election, and you had some notes, and I'm so curious as to whether you think those notes are still accurate. So first of all, what are the top market trends that you're hearing right now? Because I think some of these effects were immediate after Donald Trump got elected in.
Yeah, hey, thank you so
Hey.
much, Ramya and Kel. I mean, a wonderful congrats on the new show. This is wonderful. And yeah, to your question, I mean, since the announcement at about 2:30 this morning, funny enough,
Mm-hmm.
I actually listened to it. That President Trump is the new electee. Um, Markets have been on fire. S&P
Right?
actually went up just shy of 2% overnight, and the Russell 2000 is the same thing. I mean, these are just indexes of the market, but what's happening is the confidence in the U.S. dollar is incredibly has been bolstered because of and I'll say the stability of a Republican candidate. And really, that's it. I mean, Trump stands for a lot of conservatism and stability in the
Yeah.
U.S. economy, and that's where folks are sort of leaning into that as they move forward.
Which is generally
Okay.
traditional, isn't it? It's the viewpoint that Republicans they speak to those people who are much more watching their money or speak about that area. So the markets, the businesses, they're going to breathe a bit more of a sigh of relief.
Yeah, I mean, let's think about it. I mean, we know that a typical Republican individual stands for that conservatism. I mean, if you liken it to our Canadian government here, our conservative Canadian and a Republican parliament similar, very conservative, looking at, spending money, fiscally responsible, really trying to make sure that we're not well, not we, I shouldn't say, making sure that the Republican regime is managing that,
Yeah.
those social programs and such, whereas a Democratic parliament would be a little more liberal, a little bit more like how can we help everyone? We
Mm-hmm.
need to spend on different services and so when we look at a Republican regime, I mean, wow, we could think or we can pontificate that they're going to tighten up on some of that liberal spending and really kind of clamp down. I mean, and we know, President-elect Trump has been talking about tariffs. He loves the word tariffs and he wants to institute more tariffs. And with that said, I mean, that strengthens a little bit of that economy right in the local US of A.
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
journalists are talking about, the relationship between Canada and the U.S. in this term, right? And I'm so curious if this is this immediate effect, because apparently the Canadian dollar went down, the peso went down, and this is all pretty much overnight, right? Like even before trade started this morning, the
Yep.
effects were pretty much there, like very visible. Is that normal? You talk about like this Republican regime and the effect it having being understandable and precedented, but is the effect that this being so immediate normal? Or how should
Yeah,
we
it's
be thinking
I
about
interesting
mean,
that?
yeah, I
because it
mean,
goes
we
up and down,
norm
Ryan. Like, I
yeah.
mean, let's face it, the peso and the Canadian dollar are not what they ever used to be, and we see the little percentages every day down or sliding, but nothing to speak of, and nothing really is said except on a business report. So as Rum's asking, like, I'm just assuming this is kind of just the normal, and we're just calling it out because this is our fears, and we're looking.
a little from column A, a little from column B, but we do know that with sort of short-term duration or what we would call short-term instruments like T-bills and such, they really focus on the U.S. dollar. With a Republican win, not just the presidency, but also the House.
Yeah.
The
The
Mhm.
Senate.
consideration is that those policies that they have been talking about for so many months leading up to the election will have opportunity to be passed. So with
Yeah.
that said, the strength of the US dollar, it sort of bolsters the strength of the US dollar because what they're trying to forecast is, hey, there's going to be good productivity in the country. There's going to be more onshoring of companies. There's going to be strength and stability in their borders, and then people are going to be tariffed or
Yeah.
taxed to
Yep.
sort of that trade coming in.
Yeah, so that it's better to do business. Those 36 states that will say they directly do, their biggest trade partner is
Yeah,
Canada, there's more reason for them to stay at home in that aspect.
Hmm.
you got it. You got it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Great.
Any of the areas where we would say this doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Who's running? We've talked about the internal. We understand this man's going to look out, as he said, for the best interests of his people, as you're supposed to as a leader. Any of the areas when we talk about the markets that it really doesn't necessarily affect us this way. I mean, we talked about Trump
Mm.
not having to run the table when it comes to Congress and everything else now that they've got so many positions covered, like the House.
Yeah, and I mean so presidential elections, when we sort of as we lead up to it, when we're thinking about investments and how we should protect our investments and such, presidential elections are not something that we can predict, right? It's like we can't predict where the hurricane is going to land. A
Mm,
great analogy, eh? And
right.
we can't
Yes.
predict when a volcano is going to erupt. We can't predict those things. So what we need to do is we need to prepare our investments or prepare our holdings to respond in any market. When we even leading up to this election, we have to understand that, the race was so close, 50%, almost 50-50 for the most part. We know that
Mhm.
President-elect Trump one with a little bit greater of a 50-50. It wasn't a landslide, but it was a little bit more than that. Um, and but as we were leading in, with it being so tight, it really didn't matter who won. The reality is if it
In
were
terms of
if
projections,
in
And
terms of
like for
financial
projections,
finances.
yeah,
financial
Okay.
stability
financial
issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
projections, it didn't
Yeah.
matter because
Okay.
because if it were leading into the election where they expected 70% Harris and 30% Trump, and then he did win, now that would create some instability in the financial world. But
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
because it was so tight, because it was so close, neither party was tipping the scale either way. With a Harris government, I think the economic understanding would be it would be more of the same, and everything would sort of trot along as expected. Whereas now we've got a little spice in the mix, so we'll have to keep an eye on it. But the overall result in 4 years, this election probably wouldn't really have made a significant impact in the overall market.
And I'm curious about that. Like for Canadians who want to kind of keep track or are starting to notice what this effect may be on our personal finances, our investments, our savings, etc. Um, what should we be paying attention to? Can you break down some of that for us, like the relationship that our money has in all of this?
Yeah, and I mean, for the most part, in the grand scheme of things, many folks who are positioned in good quality, if it's a stock portfolio or a good quality bond portfolio or a balance of each, or if they're in a mutual fund portfolio, the realities are that there really isn't a lot to concern yourself about from a high level. Day
Mm.
traders, folks who are sort of really trying to play the individual stocks and trying to pump some dough into their bank account, like those are the ones who are going to try to make a bet on a particular situation upcoming, whether it's is XYZ company going to I mean, not that I'm endorsing any of these, but let's
Hmm.
think about it. Tesla went up 6% overnight. A lot of that has to do
That's
with
significant.
the um, relationship that Elon
Between him
has
and
with
Trump.
Sure.
President Trump, right? And
Hmm.
and so so to that end, also, I mean, in his acceptance speech this morning, President Trump mentioned about the landing of the spaceship. And we all know that Boeing has had a little bit of difficulty in the last number of months with a strike, and Boeing and SpaceX are two companies who bid for U.S. contracts to fly to Mars and the moon and fly into the outer space. So the
Hmm.
likelihood, and I'm not saying one or the over the other, but I mean, there's a pretty good likelihood that, Elon or may win a few more uh, um, contracts going forward, probably due to his alliance with now the new president of the United States.
Yeah.
So there is some bets there that, hey, this could be a good potential investment. So like there are things we can look at. There are so in a granular level, and then there are just sort of themes that we can monitor as we look forward.
Is there anything that you're able to kind of reflect back on in previous post-presidential election projections for finances and say, oh, yeah, this feels familiar? Or does it feel the opposite? Does it feel safe? Does it feel scary? I'm curious because you've done this for
Yeah.
a while and I'm sure you've paid attention to just comparisons.
Yeah, and I'll be honest. I mean, we've had this similar market response typically following most Republican candidate wins.
Okay.
Um, Generally, the market is very strong, very stimulated because they're expecting future growth. What's going to be quite interesting is to understand if the federal the Fed in the United States um, continues their theme of reducing their interest rates. And there's a decision today, and I haven't had a chance to have a look to see if their announcement is out, but I mean they were calling for a 25 basis points reduction
Yeah.
initially. I don't know what the response is, and I just hadn't had time to check that out
Yeah.
before. But I mean that following the immediate candidate announcement, so it'd be quite interesting where that goes.
Hmm.
With respect to
Yeah.
Canada, we have
Right.
an incredibly lowered inflation rate. So our Bank of Canada having a look at should they continue their reduction of interest rates, it's very positive. With the
Hmm.
Yeah.
US,
Yeah.
they might want to pause and think about it. Maybe they want to continue. It would really,
Similar conversations, though, right?
Yeah.
Around
Very.
inflation, around interest rate,
yeah,
around like the
yeah,
state of economy.
yeah. And here's the thing: let's never let's never conflict the difference between market and economy. Let's
Right.
know that
Fair.
the
Right.
market is let's know that the economy is strong. People are spending. People are still out there living their lives, traveling, buying new homes, building business, starting businesses, and getting out there and doing things. The economy is strong.
Hmm.
Markets sort of follow trends, and they really
Mhm.
look
Mhm.
through some of the short-term things that we're experiencing today.
Yeah.
They're looking
Yeah.
beyond, today and tomorrow, more 3,
Yeah.
6, 12 months into the future, 5 years into the future. Markets are
Well,
a
we will,
little more
and we'll be
dynamic.
looking at it, won't we, as we go forward? Ryan, thanks a lot, buddy. Appreciate it.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Thank you so much, guys.
Ryan
So
Chin
tight on
with
time.
us.
Such an interesting conversation.
Yeah, very
Yeah, and
much
you can
so.
reach
And
Ryan directly by emailing ryan.chin at sunlife.com or check him out on the show monthly here with us.
on the program tomorrow, Christine Malik with what it's like to play guitar while telling a story. Rummy, you can relate to that kind of timing necessarily there. Marcus McCracken with modifying his Xbox controller for ease of access. And Mary Mamalidi is here with our weekly food chat. We'll get into those conversations on the program. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Kelly & Co. AMI. Rummy and I will be back tomorrow, right? Yeah, we're here tomorrow. For sure, right? Thursday edition. We'll talk to you then.
Thanks for tuning in to Kelly & Company. Follow us on all social media. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more.